Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, AmaRouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up.
Listeners, I feel like a cactus today. Just been doing cactus arms. It's a shame you can't see this. You're seriously missing out.
I love it. And I'm like trying to get into like, what would feeling like a cactus be? And I'm like, yep, arms would be like...
spiky. Maybe a flower here.
Like arms and like slightly suspended in space and kind of not really able to move too much. Yeah, love that.
Definitely not going to be very great at samba if they can't isolate.
Although they'd be really good at balancing a headdress on top of their head.
Yes, super. Yes, so good. And if they had heels on, depending on how they were dancing, they'd be really, really good with that counterbalance. So we're not talking about cacti today, though that was a classic Ella and Amma opening. We're actually talking about, well, what we're calling victim creator.
Yes.
And the difference of being in our victim or being in our creator, how that looks, how it feels, and what we're able to manifest and put out into the world, and how we're able to impact and affect others depending on what spaces we're in. And obviously ultimately ourselves as well. Do you want to give a bit more expansion on that, Belle?
Love to.
Yeah.
I really love to think of it as this concept of moving from illusion to joy. And I want to also kind of highlight privilege within this concept, because I think there's two layers of privilege within this concept. One is not to ignore and take away from trauma and difficult experiences, and not to belittle that, being in our victim, this wording of victim or illusion, is also honoring that we go through different experiences, and not to kind of overwrite trauma or belittle that experience.
Yeah.
But for me, the concept of moving to joy is a process of working with what is obvious and realigning the focus to what would I love to create and what brings me joy. And I came across this really lovely quote by Shakespeare this week, and it just it really helped me with this, get through some things that were coming up for me in my life, which was, there's no such thing as good or bad, only thinking makes it so. Right? Just that for Shakespeare.
I love to just keep that in my pocket when I'm in any kind of creative process, any process that is asking me to share, give of myself. That
absolutely
is wonderful to remember.
That is the magic. And it really helped me. I was in a creative process this week, so I've been making a show, and it was very easy to get distracted into kind of like victim mindset. And it doesn't mean that the process wasn't, the process had many things that, if we want to use those words, were good and bad. The process was not kind of perfect, was far from perfect in many ways, actually. But the magic is when we go, I'm going to hold the vision of what I want to create, I'm going to I'm going to stay in the listening of what needs to happen in this place, in this process for that to happen. So what is obvious about what is not working within the process, so I can create what I would love to create.
That's a really key point.
Right. I think
'Cause
it's so important.
I mean, I don't know for anyone else, but definitely for me, there's a capacity to kind of stick to the plan, or to stick to what's on, what I've decided we're doing next, or to stay within the lines of what I've imagined it's going to be like in my mind.
Mm.
So that's a really important point to remember, and
Yeah.
effectively it's having that flexibility to bend, right? So we don't break, but in a way that holds the vision that you're moving toward still there,
Yeah.
at the end of everything.
Absolutely. And I think that's the magic, like to let go of this fixed idea of how it has to be, and even like how we create it. I think so often we kind of decide, oh, this is wrong because it's not going in the way that I had in my mind of how the thing should be, that we haven't even made yet.
Yeah. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then to be able to actually listen and look at the situation and go, okay, well, what's obvious? These are the things that are obvious to me. These are the things that I'm going to make happen or change or, adapt. And adapt in my thinking as well, because when we let go of good and bad, and in a way, it's almost like illusion to joy. I also I think it's really interesting. Often in the spiritual kind of world, like I love to listen to Gaia, for example, and they talk a lot about 5D, 3D, moving from 3D to 5D. And I'm beginning to to believe or to think or to wonder if that is actually illusion to joy, or victim to
Mm,
creator, in terms of it's about our thinking and it's about
yeah.
how we come from that place of empowerment. And life is hard, right? We
Yeah.
may be taught that we're not possible for most of our life, but for me, the moving to 5D or moving to creator is about shifting out of those beliefs that other people have told us, maybe, or we have believed ourselves,
Yeah.
into I am possible and this thing is possible and I'm going to create it and I'm going to do what is necessary to make that happen. So, yeah, I started like my kind of journey, my yoga journey, for example, started in 2002. So I've been doing that for a long time. But it was in 2014 when I met William Whitecloud, who's essentially my teacher of this work, this alchemical work of looking at the self. Um, and I realized that despite thinking I was spiritual, thinking I was on the path, I was in my victim all the time. And to kind of go on that journey, even on my journey with William Whitecloud's work. So it's been 8 years now, but it was also really triggering for me. I found it really hard to the teacher. I've had this so many times on my journey. Like my teacher of Kundalini yoga was Yogi Bhajan, who the teacher is. There's many things kind of come out about the teacher, and I've had that at multiple points on my journey where it's almost like you find that kind of guru that you're following, and then you find out the guru is human. But I think again, it comes back to there's no such thing as good and bad, but thinking makes it so, in terms of knowing our values and knowing when we are learning something that's supporting ourselves and probably other people. That I think my service is very much to do with this work that I've been studying the past 8 years. But also being able to discern when something is like that's going too far beyond my values,
Yeah.
and then being able to discern, well, is this is this true or not? And I
Yeah.
feel like that's connected to me as a creator in terms of the what's obvious to me, and where are you
Mm,
evolving to next? How are you continuing your evolution? But also that on this journey there've been many points where actually I was in my victim trying to do the work, and then almost like self-sabotaging and getting in the way of myself. But what I now understand is that it was also that I was in trauma and I needed to heal. And that I think we have to honor that as a part of this journey. You know, we don't just go like, I'm not a victim anymore, create. We have to, you know, I mean, we have to do the healing, and we have to take care of
absolutely.
ourselves, and we have to nourish ourselves. And coming back to the nervous system series that we released in season 4, that it's so important to take care of your nervous system so that the thinking can be, you know, I talked about the prefrontal cortex and that kind of being online to make sense and make rational decisions. That for me, it's all connected, you know, the moving from 3D to 5D, the nervous system being relaxed, that everything is a part of everything else in this work.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I agree with that because, as you know, I've just been having TRE, tension trauma release exercises
With
with
Martha Cuffey
the
from season
amazing,
4.
yes, come on. Having TRE regularly really has reinforced to me that my body wisdom and my body intelligence is really strong and it's actually quite in tune. But I can be in my mind so much. I can be super cerebral and not give my body the opportunity to actually guide me. And, you know, I really have noticed that with TRE, which works a lot to obviously release stresses, tension. Well, not obviously, but it works to release stress, tension, trauma from the body through a natural tremor and shaking process. And, you know, I'm already noticing the difference in how my nervous system, my being responds to being in certain situations whereby previously it may have had a slightly different response because I'm changing it. I'm building a more flexible nervous system effectively. And
Yes.
even not only does it release what may be held in the body, it allows you to respond differently to things. It allows you to come towards something with a different perspective. It allows you to start to shake off some of those restrictions. And so I say all of this because part of that transitionary journey, definitely for me, is not necessarily all in up here in the cerebral space. You know, you can read, you can understand things on a cerebral level, but there is a huge element, definitely for me, of being able to understand things on and in an embodied way. I really need to receive things and have shifts on an embodied level for things to really change for me to move from my victim toward my creator.
Yeah. Yes to that.
And we know the body keeps the score. We know that movement is emotions in motion. We know all of this stuff. And there are so many different ways to get into our beings. But yeah, I just want to just reinforce that we can do all the understanding on a intellectual level, but the shifting also has to happen on a level of the
Totally.
being. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like, for example, this process this week, I kind of feel invincible.
Yes, I love
Like,
that.
you know, it's been really hard. And I know I'm not invincible. I'm in a human body. I'm in human form. And, you know, the body
Yeah.
gets tired and the body. And actually there were multiple moments where I was like, okay, my brain is just too full. I can't handle any more questions, any more thoughts. You know, I literally was like, I'm full. But at the same time, it's like when you know how to focus on the end result and also bring the compassion, the care for oneself and for other people, there's this just beautiful feeling of invincibility. And, you know, like looking at what we've made, I'm like, that is, I nearly used, I'm going to use Amma word instead. That is bloody amazing.
Yes. I was like, it's coming, it's coming.
I don't think I've ever said that word before, but I'm so inspired by you because I hear it on a regular. I like to go more extreme with my swear words. But I'm holding it back for Pup.
Well done, my love. And also to add to that, what you were saying in terms of giving yourself the space to move from this restricted belief, or I would say a contracted awareness into an expansive awareness, there you have to have that compassion, as you said, with yourself, because it is a process, it is a journey. You're not going to just be like, okay, okay, maybe I've got this level of awareness now, so I expect myself to be here. It's like, it doesn't work like that. There is a peeling back process, there's a shedding, and then a processing, and then an absorbing, and then again moving forward, and a shedding and a processing and absorbing that and expanding and moving forward. And it consistently, I feel, happens like that. So it is really important, I think, as you said, to have that compassion toward ourselves. And also, obviously, the further we expand our awareness, I guess the more possible it feels for us to be doing the work more and more and more in our creator space, because it's like we're shedding and shedding and shedding and shedding
Totally.
that kind of victim space that's kept us held in a certain contracted awareness. But I think, especially at the beginning, whatever the beginning of one's journey is, like the compassion and understanding and the patience is really needs to be there in a big way, because it doesn't mean that you're not moving towards your creator. And it doesn't
Absolutely.
mean you're
Yeah.
not going to blossom into that space, but you have to allow yourself the time to really work through whatever is there. Because like you said, life is not easy. We all have trauma, big T traumas, small T traumas, and they manifest in us in different ways. So, how can we slowly move into our fullest expression of self? How can we move back to our true nature?
And I do think that the most obvious way for me is about being in innocence of that good and bad, that how do we step out of defining everything and ourselves in those terms, in those binaries and those polarities? And how do we get back to that state of innocence or inner sense where we're listening to our intuition, but also where we're not making up what anything means? And I find it so fascinating to catch myself when I'm like, this thing, that means this about me. And it's like, no, it doesn't. How do we unlearn? How do we constantly question and release those beliefs? And that those beliefs are essentially the illusion, And it's like, then sometimes I've had multiple times on this journey where I'm like, I am my own glass ceiling, because I've got a belief here that I'm repeating and I'm saying it into the world, and to just catch that and be like, how do I break that ceiling so that I can believe I'm possible in a whole new way?
Yeah.
And as I do that, wow, the experiences that I have are just, unfolding so beautifully, and the possibility is expanding, ever expanding.
Yeah. I totally resonate with that. And just as you were talking, two things came to mind. One was an experience I had yesterday where I was in the middle of my knee training program, and I was doing an exercise. You do everything on both sides, and I got to the second side and I was like, whoa, there's so much room in this side. It's so much more flexible. That muscle's so much more open. What's going on? Why is the other side? And then straight away I was making it mean something. I was like, so the other side that's tighter, I wonder if that's big. And then I just had to catch myself, and I was like, no. So you don't need to make it mean anything about you. Just observe it, like notice it's there. Okay, that's enough. And I was like, okay, cool. That's interesting. Cool. And I was like, I could hear Martha Cuffey in my head as well from my TRE sessions, with me noticing things in my body and then going, and then she was like, you're making it mean something. You're making it mean something. And I was like, yes, it's something that a lot of us do a lot of the time. The more we can release, like you're saying, the idea of making things mean something, the more we can actually expand.
And create.
Exactly. Neither of us are saying that if you are always or consistently working to move from a place of illusion to joy, that you're not a creator or that you can't create.
And we create everything in our lives as well, right? It doesn't have to be good or bad. Only thinking makes it so.
We never arrive. There is no sense of arriving as this creator who's so fully aware that they never have any illusions to shed or to release or to work through, or to what we are saying is that you can shift from that space to the other, and it's a continual process, it's a continual work, but the more and more you get free, the more and more you will be in your power and possibility to create what you want.
And I just want to add that on that note, the observing the obvious, the observing what's obvious, that is that bridge between the two. You know, instead of going, I'm going to spend all my time and energy and focus on, you know, the victim, on how I've been wronged, on like all of that stuff that we can spend so much of our time thinking about. And again, I'm not saying, you know, that we have to push away anything. We do go through these really tough experiences, but what we can do is we can refocus using that bridge of, well, what's obvious and where do I put my attention? And, you know, like, just as an example, so last week I had this realization. I recorded a set of like 11 meditations last year, and then they basically sat on my computer because I had all sorts of excuses and procrastinations. And what I realized was, actually, I'm making it about myself and I'm scared of releasing this thing to the world. And so then I just was like, just get over yourself, you know, just like what's obvious, just edit them and put them out in the world. It doesn't even matter if anyone actually uses them right now, but they're far more useful in the world than on my computer for a year. And so I actually, I even went and got in the studio and recorded loads more. And then since I've released them, I've had like another 7 downloads of new meditations that, like, a lot of the ones that I recorded are kind of, a lot of the ones that I recorded are ones that I've learned from other people, where I'm saying, you know, this is a meditation I've learned from so-and-so, but I really wanted to be able to offer them to my clients and so on in my voice. But since having done that, it's like I've cleared the space, and now all these downloads of my own things are coming through, where probably if I'd just kept on with having them on my computer, I wouldn't have had the space to create, and then to create more, and then to create more. So again, it's like more of the breaking the glass ceilings, our own glass ceilings, so that we can continue to evolve and be even more in service by being ourselves to the full.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Mesma.
I am AmaRouge. And we are PowerUp Podcast.